humblemud.
Today, I'm talking about mid quote-unquote games that I adore. These are games that I've either seen people refer to as mid before or would probably not find very good if they tried them today for the first time. But these are games I still personally love. So just remember that if you love any of the games I feature here, before you get upset because I call them mid, keep in mind I love these games too. In fact, the last game on this list is one of my favorite video games of all time. So I hope you stick around for that one. Before I begin though, let me know if there are any subpar or strictly average games that you also love to bits as well, so I don't feel like the only weirdo here. On to the first one. There are pockets of time, usually late at night, where I'm a little too tired to dive into a game that demands a lot of thought or lightning fast reflexes, but I'm also not quite ready to go to bed because my gradually aging punk rock spirit is trying to convince me that adulthood and a good night's sleep are still things to rebel against. And lately, whenever I catch myself in that odd pocket of time, I've been playing a game called Enemy Territory Quake Wars. Now, I know that one's not necessarily a household name when we're talking about the Quake franchise, and spoiler alert, it's not the best Quake game. It's probably not even the best Enemy Territory game. But after a long and arduous day where the wrinkles in your brain have been wrinkling all day, Quake Wars is such an easy non-commitment of a game that allows those wrinkles to sort of relax a bit, and the worries of the past 10 to 12 hours just sort of fade behind the sounds of the bullets and grenades and the grunts of the Strogg. And Quake Wars is perfect for exactly this sort of thing because the matches are only 20 minutes long and this game doesn't have online anymore on console officially anyways, so you're just facing off against the game's bots who aren't necessarily the smartest opponents ever. I actually chill out so hard playing this game that I usually forget what the objective is, you know, the whole gain the enemy territory thing. I think that's why the game is called this actually, and usually just rack up kills instead until I have about 4 minutes left and then I start scrambling a little bit and try to do what the game wanted me to do 16 minutes ago. Apparently the PC version of this game is amazing. It always historically scored better when it came to reviews and even has an online scene going on today. But I personally feel like the offline console experience of Enemy Territory Quake Wars in 2025 is the definition of adequate. The graphics, sound, gameplay, everything, it's gotta be like a 5 out of 10, right? It doesn't even have a campaign. Seriously, I had the demo of this back in the day, and playing the demo is pretty much the same as playing the full game. When Quake Wars released, many felt it didn't do enough to set itself apart from the game that came before it, Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, which you can still get for free on Steam right now, by the way, and many simply said this isn't Quake, this is Battlefield with a Quake skin. And while that lovely Quake Wars demo I was talking about earlier was once on Steam, it's nowhere to be found anymore. Regardless though, especially when you're just playing against bots like I am, you're probably not going to experience a jaw-dropping scene, learn about yourself as a person or about life, or even feel all that accomplished after a 20-minute session, even if you win. But I'm still happy to have this game and play it occasionally for the reasons I shared above. I even picked it up on PS3, and one day maybe I'll get into the PC scene. Now, if there's any franchise out there I could always come back to in the hopes of finding a mid-game or two that I'll inevitably end up loving, it's the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. And that's a good thing for me because I honestly tend to gravitate towards his lesser appreciated titles anyway. When I was in high school, I purchased the Sonic Gems collection mostly to try Sonic the Fighters for the first time and to replay Sonic Triple Trouble, which I had on the Game Gear. Oddly enough though, it was Sonic R that stood out to me as the true lasting gem of the bunch. Admittedly, the controls are kind of wonky considering you really have to hammer down those L and R triggers to take turns, the level layouts are kind of odd, and the characters feel really slippery. And in order to find any of the game's mini secrets, you have to go out of the way off the beaten path, and that's not always conducive to actually winning a race. I also pretty much only play as Sonic, so I can't really tell you all the competitive ins and outs surrounding this game's roster. However, I've beaten this game like 20 times, and I've included it in this video, so I must like it, right? And that's not a brag, by the way, because just getting from the beginning to the end and not worrying about unlockables takes maybe an hour max once you get a handle on the controls. controls. But man, despite all of that, I still find this game so fun and always have. I love the bright, colorful graphics of Sonic R. And to be honest, this 1996 to 97 spiky-haired era of Sonic is one of my favorite looks of his. But the biggest thing this game is hard carried by is the music. Oh my gosh, the OST on this thing. Of course, Sonic's known for having great music, but Sonic R easily has some of my favorite tracks on it across the course of the entire franchise. You can only imagine how stoked I was to see clips of those songs finally performed live. My favorite track you'll hear right off the bat. It's in the first level and it's called
Can You Feel the Sunshine?
There's just really nothing like this song. It never fails to put me in a good mood. And just to illustrate how great this song is, we're going to do a little exercise. I'm going to play the song in the background while rattling off some inconvenient real-life things, and you can tell me if they even sound all that bad when the song is on. 3, 2... Stubbing your toe. Well done steak with ketchup. Going to the DMV. Wet socks. Forgot your homework. Getting hit in the nut. See? Doesn't sound all that bad, does it? Well, except maybe the well done steaks.
What if somebody wants theirs well done?
We ask them politely yet firmly to leave.
The last thing I wanted to say is that seeking out the secrets in this game is really fun, and though I do pretty much only play as Sonic, unlocking characters like Metal Sonic, Metal Knuckles, and of course Super Sonic are admittedly pretty sick. Sonic R is a good time if you get acquainted with the controls and aren't afraid to just let the jank. Another game I played on the GameCube that holds a special place in my heart, in big part thanks to its soundtrack, is Dave Mirra's Freestyle BMX 2. It first released on the PS2 and was a launch title for the GameCube, but admittedly doesn't look too much better than the average Nintendo 64 game. If you grew up with the Tony Hawk games and decided to try this one for the first time today, you might be inclined to just dismiss it as an inferior knockoff game, and I wouldn't blame you for that, but admittedly there is a lot of fun to be had with this one. There's a story mode, a 3-minute session mode, a free ride mode without time limits, and a park editor. There's also a multiplayer mode, but I never had friends around when I was playing this one, so I can't tell you how that was. I love that this game was quirky and random enough to include classic characters like the Slim Jim guy and the Amish boy with his infamous wooden bike and corncob pipe. Iconic characters. Now, I can't play any of the tracks in this video since YouTube's copyright system will shut down my YouTube channel if I do, but I always personally really enjoyed the Dave Mirra soundtrack. It's one of my favorites. I picked this game up on a whim when I saw that it had both Sum 41 and Black Sabbath on it, but some other standouts for me were Rage Against the Machine, Sublime, The Cult, A Tribe Called Quest, Phoenix TX, and Gangstar. Fair warning though, the game always opens with Godsmack's Awake, and that will probably make you hate that song. Anyways, Dave Mirra was my introduction to a lot of these artists, and I'm genuinely forever thankful for that. Doin' Time and Moment of Truth are still my favorite Sublime and Gangstar songs respectively, to this day because of this game. I was also always a big fan of Dave Mirra as a kid. The dude was an absolute legend, and when I was growing up I thought it was so cool that he moved to North Carolina later in life because that's the state where I'm from. The GameCube and Xbox versions actually have an extra level not present in the PS2 version that is based on a real-life Greenville NC park. I still really love this game even if I'm not the best at it. We're going to move from Dave Mirra's BMX bikes to dirt bikes with Sega's Enduro Racer. No, not that one for the arcade. This one for the Sega Master System. Yeah. I never grew up with a Sega system other than the Game Gear, unfortunately, but for my 18th birthday, I got a Dingu A320. Have any of you guys ever heard of this? It was a retro emulation handheld console released before those things were really all that popular like they are today. Anyways, I was really getting into retro gaming and emulation at the time and downloaded this Master System ROM set.
Allegedly!
I figured if I loved stuff like Kid Chameleon and Gunstar Heroes on the Genesis, I'd probably find a Master System game I enjoyed too, right? Well, let me tell you right now. Enduro Racer is the first Master System game I've ever loved, and I beat it again right before making this video. It still holds up. Personally, I like it better than its arcade counterparts, and it's criminal this game is never included even in Master System Hidden Gems lists. As you can see, this game combines the isometric view of something like Paperboy with gameplay akin to Excitebike. You're trying to race your way to the finish, overtaking as many other racers as you can, while pulling off all of these crazy jumps and weaving in and out of harm's way as you go. Once you finish the race, you're given the option to upgrade your vehicle for the next race. You'll receive an upgrade point for every racer that you overtake and can choose to hold on to them or spend them. But just remember, the upgrades don't carry over race to race, so there's definitely some strategy involved here. I'd highly recommend the engine, suspension, and accelerator upgrades in that order. This game seems super simple on the surface, but actually hitting these jumps like I'm doing here consistently is pretty tough, but rewarding once you pull it off. It's incredibly fast, surprisingly addictive, and there is a really nice treat that waits for you at the end once you beat the game. Now, I'm not going to spoil exactly what it is that they say, but the creators of this game write this really nice message that's oddly motivational, talking to you directly as a person about the uphill climb we all face in this race of life. It's just really heartwarming, unexpected, and sweet. If there's any game I recommend out of this entire list to play, it's probably this one because not only do I think it's incredibly underrated, forgotten, surprisingly deep, it's also not a big time sink whatsoever, so there's literally nothing to lose even if you try it and decide you don't like it. Another thing, I didn't know about this until later, but the Japanese version of this game has literally twice the amount of tracks in comparison to the Western version, and that's because the Western version is a 1 megabyte cart while the Japanese is a 2 megabyte cart for some reason. So over here in the States, players had to go through the same tracks twice, which is kind of lame compared to the Japanese version, which has 10 unique tracks. But regardless, I've played them both. Either one is worth playing. Both games are in English, so just give it a go. Another simple but addictive arcade game, and one that I also discovered on my Dingu A320 back in the day, is Timber. This was made by Midway Games, and you can't spell mid without Midway, am I right? I'm just kidding. I love Midway, unless we're talking about Pit Fighter. In this game, you play as not Mario, and you're this lumberjack who has to cut down these pesky trees that grow at an alarming rate and supply us with that nasty thing known as oxygen. Be careful not to trip over the stumps though, it's surprisingly easy to do. During your journey, you might encounter bears that thankfully don't try to viciously maul you, but instead throw beehives your way. Actually, maybe that's worse, I don't know. Sometimes there are birds that come out of the trees and you can capture them for extra points for some reason. In between rounds, you do a log rolling mini game, you know, typical lumberjack stuff, and then it's back to the tree farm with you. As the game goes on, it gets progressively faster and more difficult, and once you lose, you just want to put in another quarter and play it again. Now, some of you might recognize how similar this game looks to Tapper. Well, good eye, it was made by the same people. But while I see Tapper come up in retro game conversations occasionally, Timber is pretty much never for some reason, and that's a real shame. It's honestly really fun and really charming. Now, this last one is one of my favorite games of all time. I mean, it's probably in my top 10, so don't get mad at me. I love The Legend of Dragoon. I make references to it and include songs from it in a ton of my videos. From the moment I laid eyes on it, saved up money for ages while I wore the demo disc out for this game, and then finally played it, I have loved this game. However, I think if one were to play it today for the first time with no context, especially after playing something like Final Fantasy VII and its remakes, Expedition 33, Dragon Quest XI, The Witcher 3, or Kingdom Come 2, you get it, whatever, LOD might be a little harder to appreciate. So let me first tell you the bad and get that out of the way so that we can get to the good. The English translation leaves a lot to be desired, and you'll kind of have to go out of your way to reinterpret what they're saying on your own to make it more palatable or eloquent. The character names were decided by anonymous employee nominations and surveys by the team working on it at the time, so certain characters have goofy, ill-fitting names like this vicious bird enemy here named Rodriguez. No, seriously, it's hilarious.
Rodriguez! Attack!
And likely the coolest thing about this game to kids in the early 2000s were the Dragoon transformations, but unfortunately in practice, these transformations leave a lot to be desired when it comes to actual in-game utility. There are certain systems like the throwable magic items which pretty much break the game. LOD is also one of the poster children for early 3D JRPGs when it comes to doing that thing where they force you to watch tons of slow panning camera angles because they thought that would just wow you back then. And to be fair, it did at the time, though it may not today. However, the world of The Legend of Dragoon is still one of the most interesting worlds in JRPGs. While the graphics have obviously aged, it still has some of the most beautiful pre-rendered backgrounds of all time. The thematical concepts here and the general aesthetics of this game are absolutely incredible. I've never fallen in love with a character in such a short amount of time in the way that I have with Levitz. He's really up there with like Sylvando from Dragon Quest XI for me. And though not always the most useful thing to actually use in battle, watching the characters transform into a Dragoon was akin to seeing Goku go Super Saiyan for the first time as a kid. And while the timed hit and addition-focused battle system could be improved upon and sometimes feels a little too time-consuming, it's incredibly fun to master. The music is memorable. It's one of those OSTs where every single song will take you back to specific moments from the game. Oh, and LOD has lore spanning back 11,000 years. The Legend of Dragoon is still to this day one of my favorite games of all time. I've played it over and over many times, and while a lot of people didn't feel like it lived up to the heights of the greats during its era even back then, and likely even less people do today, I still love this game. Honestly, if enjoying The Legend of Dragoon as much as I do means that I have bad tastes in JRPGs, I don't want to have good taste. This game is ripe for a remake, and its universe is so vast it's a crime that we've never had a prequel or something. Us LOD fans have been waiting for over 20 years now, and it's a real shame that Sony is still just sitting on this franchise. At least Dart had a cameo in Astrobot, and we have this amazing fan-made PC build of LOD in the works called Severed Chains. Links to that are below. Well, I think that about does it for today. I wanted to do something a little more simple and sweet after my Quest 64 deep dive video, and I thought this could be the start of a really fun series. I have a bunch of other games I could share for a potential mid-games part 2 video, so let me know if you'd like to see that. By the way, that Quest video I just mentioned might be right up your alley if you enjoyed this video, because pretty much all the games I talked about in that one could have been in this one too. Feel free to suggest games you know maybe aren't the best, but you still love anyway, and if you've played any of the games I've mentioned, please share your thoughts and memories down below. If you're still here, thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay humble.